So if you spend any time in eczema forums, you're going to notice that people want relief, and that's obvious. But what they also want is an explanation, and one that actually makes sense. And for many people, Chinese medicine doesn't make sense unless it comes with scientific language. Now, I totally understand that. You see, Chinese traditional medicine already does have a complete system for diagnosis and prescribing with clear pattern differentiation as well as formula strategies. But modern research gives us yet another layer. It helps explain why certain herbs and formulas behave the way they do in terms of inflammation, immune signaling, and skin barrier function. Now, by keeping the Chinese medicine framework intact, I hope to translate part of it into scientific language that people can recognize and relate with. See, in Chinese medicine, we talk a lot about flavor and nature of herbs. Now, the flavors, of course, are bitter, sour, salty, acrid, sweet, and bland. And you see, each flavor has a direct action on the body. So bitter is going to drain heat down and out. Acrid flavors move and disperse. Sour astringes. Salty flavors soften hardness, and sweet tonifies. And bland is going to help drain dampness out. Now, the nature of an herb refers to its temperature. So does it create a cooling effect in the body like mint does, or a warming effect like cinnamon? So this is what we mean when we talk about the herb's nature. Now, when we look at an individual's signs and symptoms, we're going to choose herbs based on flavor and nature to help restore balance. So what's fascinating about Chinese medicine is that we don't necessarily need to know the chemical compounds of each herb to use it effectively. We just need to be able to determine the pattern that the patient is presenting with. So we look for things such as, is there heat or inflammation, exudate or dampness? Is there wind, which refers to itch or movement in the body? And then from there, we choose herbs that are going to match the pattern. So bitter and cold herbs are going to address the heat. Bland herbs help drain dampness out, and so on. Now, the interesting part is that the herbs that share these traditional qualities often do contain the kinds of chemical compounds that end up matching the physiology that we're trying to correct and balance. Now, one key herb that keeps coming up in eczema discussions is Huang Qin, otherwise known as Chinese skullcap. Now, this herb is making its rounds in eczema forums for its ability to reduce inflammation, curb itching, and support the skin barrier. Now, but before I go on, I want to be clear. A single herb may have real value, but it usually isn't strong enough by itself to create long-term results. You see, Huang Qin is going to work best as part of a comprehensive formula that matches the person's full presentation. This is where Chinese medicine prescribed by a licensed practitioner tends to excel and outperform generic one-herb-fits-all type of advice, which you typically find in a lot of these eczema forums. So looking at Huang Qin contains potent flavonoids, primarily baicalin and baicalin. Baicalin. I believe that's right. So what is a flavonoid? In simple terms, flavonoids are natural compounds that give plants pigmentation, and they help protect them from pathogens such as environmental stress as well as UV light. Now, they're widely studied for antioxidant and anti-inflammatory activity. In the human body, they're usually talked about in terms of how they influence the cellular signaling and help to reduce oxidative stress. So let's take a closer look at baicalin and baicalin. Baicalin and baicalin, two of the main flavonoids found in Huang Qin. Now, during an eczema flare, the immune system is basically short-circuiting. So it over-responds to triggers, and that over-response creates the redness, the swelling, the heat, and the itching. So what makes these compounds interesting is that research suggests that they can help to interrupt the inflammatory signaling, basically meaning that they may reduce some of the chemical messaging that keeps the skin stuck in that reactive state. So during a flare, the body releases cytokines, which you can think of as the immune system's distress signals. Now in eczema, some of these signals push the body into an allergy-style inflammation pattern that keeps the skin irritated and itchy. Now, research on these two flavonoids suggests that they may work both upstream as well as downstream. So meaning they can help to quiet early alarm signals, and they can also reduce the inflammatory messaging that drives the redness, the swelling, and the itch. Now, these compounds are also studied for their antioxidant effects, which matters because oxidative stress can make inflammation more intense and harder to shut off. So what's especially important is that it's not only about calming the redness. You see, because eczema is also a barrier problem. And once the skin barrier is compromised, moisture escapes and more easily for irritants to get in. So the immune system just kind of keeps getting triggered over and over. Now, baicalin and baicalein have been studied for their potential to support the barrier by recovering and influencing proteins involved in barrier strength, and by reducing water loss through the skin. And there's also growing recognition that itch isn't just skin deep, that chronic itch actually becomes nerve driven over time. And these two flavonoids have been explored in their ability to calm certain itch related signals. So it's important to reiterate that none of this means that DIY Huang Qin is the answer. Herbs can interact with medications. Herb quality, of course, is very important, and dosing matters as well. So the real strength of Chinese herbal medicine is pattern differentiation together with a custom formula designed to match and treat the person, not just the diagnosis. And honestly, that's where most people go wrong when they try to copy what they see and read online. So this is exactly why I say eczema doesn't need another trend, it needs a strategy. The traditional language of flavor and nature and pattern differentiation gives us a roadmap for building that strategy. And modern research helps explain how these choices may influence inflammation, itch signaling, and barrier repair. So in the next post, we're going to continue this exploration by looking at another core herb used to treat many heat-type skin presentations. We're going to look at the herb Sheng Di Huang, otherwise known as the Romania root or Chinese foxglove root. We'll talk about how it's used traditionally, what it's doing in a formula, and what modern research suggests about its role in inflammatory skin patterns.